Hello, thank you for granting me this opportunity to answer the following questions. Please tell us about yourself. What are your hobbies? My name is Pauline Jonge from Kenya, a passionate teacher of English and literature. My hobbies include reading, writing, and traveling. I'm deeply interested with other people's cultures. What motivated you to become a teacher for the subject for which you are applying? From a young age, I loved reading novels and stories, and they would take me to an ideal world that exposed me to a lot of things about people and the world. Later in life, as I settled for my career choice, I really had a passion for the English language. Throughout my education, I performed very well in the subject. I therefore chose English and literature because I knew that I had a passion. The other question is, tell us about your involvement in extracurricular activities that you could coach or supervise. From my certificates, you'll see that I am the coach of chess in our school, and my students have competed in tournaments locally and internationally. I am also the patron of Journalism Club at My Forces Academy, where I nurture my learners to edit news articles and to publish. We even have a school magazine. I've also been actively involved in drama, which has seen me take my students to various competitions in our country, including the national level. The other question is, what subjects have you taught and at what age levels? I have taught English and literature to learners between 12 years of age and 18 years of age. During my part-time hours, I also look for jobs in private schools where I teach English and social studies to gain an extra coin. The other question is, how do you prepare to teach your lessons and what do your lesson plan include? So I prepare by identifying the relevant topic from the syllabus, and I also come up with relevant teaching methods. My lesson plan will include the lesson topic, the lesson subtopic. It will have clearly stated objectives. It will have a list of the learning and teaching resources such as books, flashcards, and any other relevant resource. We'll have a review of about 5 minutes to review the previous lesson. Here the learners will recall what they learned previously and link what they learned to the new lesson. I'll have an introduction of about 5 minutes, and this is aimed at arousing my learners' curiosity. I will define relevant terms for the topic of the day. I'll also ask my students for examples that we can relate to what we are going to learn. For example, if I'm teaching grammar and I'm teaching the parts of speech, let's say the prepositions, I'll ask students to give me various prepositions that are using objects that are in our class. For example, I might ask them, where is the book? And they will tell me that the book is on the table. Then I'll use that example to expound on the lesson. My lesson plan will also include the lesson development, which will take 20 minutes, and here I will extensively use the learning and teaching activities. Here I will explain the new concepts to my learners. We will discuss depending on the topic. We will have questions and answer activities depending on the question. We will observe depending on the question, and just to pinpoint a particular lesson, like that one of grammar, let's say we are learning about prepositions, I might give my learners an activity to attempt. Then they will discuss, and then we will review it together. I'll expound more on the topic that I'm teaching in this segment of my lesson plan. The other segment of my lesson plan is the lesson conclusion, which is 10 minutes. Here I will assess what I've taught to see if my students understood. I'll check a few books and make necessary corrections for my learners. I'll also give my students a test or an exercise to go attempt questions related to what I've taught outside the classroom, and then later I will check their work and give them individual feedback. The other question is, talk about the teaching strategies or methods that you effectively use in your classroom. I have various teaching methods that I apply, but the most favorite one for my language teaching is the communicative language teaching, because this one has really helped my learners to acquire communication skills of the English language, because here I give them activities such as discussion, role playing, they have dialogues, they have speaking and interactive sessions depending on the topic, and the learner is able to freely talk without feeling judged. So when they interact freely, I'm also able to monitor the challenges that they could be having and correct each individual student appropriately. Here I'm also able to reaffirm what is learned in the different areas. So the other one that I really love is the task-based learning, where I give my learners tasks. They could come in the form of quizzes. This task will also come in the form of exercises. For example, I might tell my learner to go and write an official letter correctly using the correct format, the correct content, the correct language and tone. So after writing, we'll come back together and review what they have done together. Therefore, I'll guide them and correct them appropriately. I have other teaching methods that I do apply, but because of time, I'll settle for the two that I've mentioned. The other question is, when someone enters your classroom, describe the learning activities in which the students are engaged. My classroom is a beehive of activities depending on the lesson. We have different activities such as listening and speaking. We have other activities such as writing tasks, where I might tell a student to write an essay. We have discussive activities with my learners to discuss various things. For example, in a literature class, we might discuss the themes that we've encountered in a particular story. We also have questions and answer activities in my class. The other question is, what methods do you use to evaluate your students' progress? I use various methods to evaluate my learners' progress. I use continuous assessment tests that I give after a duration of time to test a number of topics that we've learned. I also issue exams at the beginning of the term, in the middle of the term, and the end of the term to track their performance over the term. At the end of the year, we have a very major exam called the end of year exam that tracks my learners' records and performance from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. I have an assessment book that I record clearly each exam for each individual student, noting their grades and their deviations, whether positive or negative. I then call students that need special attention and work on their progress or work on how to help them achieve their goals at the end of it all. I also do have self-assessments for my learners, and this is usually aimed at helping them own their work and become responsible of their work. I also have things like observation to assess my learners' progress. Here, during class activities, I'll observe particular learners and see that they are either improving. If they improve, I applaud them. If there's an error that is made, I will call the student and guide them accordingly and correct their errors. The other question is, if you use technology in your teaching, describe how you incorporate it into your teaching. Describe any experiences you have with a smart board. I extensively use the laptop and the projector in my teaching. I also use the Google Forms, especially during the holiday, to give assignments to my students and to also give them feedback. I use my phone to upload notes and teaching material for my learners that I might sometimes print them out and issue them to my learners. I'm willing to learn about the smart board because we do not have the privilege of having any smart board in my school, but I've read extensively about it and I'm eager to use it one day in future. The other question is, if you have students who are noisy or non-attentive, share ways to you regain their attention without interrupting the lesson. I calmly and firmly tell the student to observe silence. Another thing I might do is move closer to my students so that I capture their attention. Sometimes I might be required to call the student aside after the lesson and talk to them and inquire what is going on. Where I can guide them and correct them to change, I can guide them. If the student is beyond me, I might report them to the relevant authority. The other question is, describe the most difficult problem you have to deal with as a teacher and how did you resolve this problem? Yes, there is one unforgettable incident when I was teaching literature and I was teaching about retrogressive cultural practices. So the story was about a girl who had experienced a retrogressive cultural practice. Then there's one girl who kept grumbling in my class. She even clicked. I called her aside and asked her what was going on. It was unfortunate to learn that she had actually been a victim of one of the retrogressive cultural practices and she felt triggered by the lesson. So I had to reassure her and guide her accordingly, and I told her that she was enough. In class, I would give her an opportunity to answer. I could smile at her in a reassuring way, and over time she became very confident and turned out to be one of my best performers. The other question is, give an example to show that you are a flexible person and that you can make changes to your teaching and methods. Yes, I'm a very flexible person because initially when I began teaching, I did not know how to use educational technology, but with time I've self-taught myself and I'm willing to learn more about technology. I did that during the COVID era where I self-taught myself to teach my learners online using things like Google Forms and using games like Kahoot. Recently we have a new curriculum in Kenya that is called the CBC curriculum, and we are moving from the old 844 that was teacher-centered to the CBC that is more learner-centered. I've attended seminars. I'm enthusiastic about teaching the new curriculum and I'm so happy and I'm really enjoying to teach a new curriculum. I believe that I'm flexible, I love to learn, and I'm ready for changes. If given an opportunity to learn and to teach in a global setting, I would do that with a lot of grace. Thank you.